Good morning, members. We have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the panel on education. We will make use of the request to speak system today. Please stay in your seats throughout the meeting. Do not change seats. We have 25 outstanding items for discussion. Some of them have been outstanding for 3 years. At the first meeting of the panel in this session, many members called for the items to be followed up on within this year. So we have a premise of categorizing the different items and then follow up on the items. In the end, we dealt with 90% of the 25 outstanding items at the beginning of the year. That would include manpower of teachers as well as digital education. I would like to express my gratitude to staff members of the Secretariat, as well as representatives of the administration. Today, we will discuss the policy address measures. I believe there will be some relation to the outstanding items as well. The first agenda item is information papers issued since the last meeting. No information paper has been issued. The second agenda item is briefing by the Secretary for Education on the Chief Executive's 2025 policy address. LC paper number CB brackets 31369 brackets 01. All other council members are invited to join the discussion of this item. I can see that representatives from the administration are seated. We have a number of officers in attendance. I will not go into the details of the officers in attendance due to time constraints. I will also, to make sure to exercise prudent time management, I will draw the line after the Secretary has spoken. Please press the request to speak button now if you wish to speak. Thank you. Secretary, when you're ready. Thank you. We have the country promulgating the 2024-2035 Master Plan on building China into a leading country in education, setting out the goal of developing China into a leading country in education, strengthening the supporting role of education for technology and talents, aligning closely with the development of the innovation and technology hub in the Greater Bay Area, and promoting digital education. We are the only city in the world that has 5 top 100 universities. We have 4 universities in the top 10 of the most internationalized universities. We also have 6 subjects that are in the top 10 universities in the world. It shows how great of a position we're in. We have many measures to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub that would include a task force on study in Hong Kong. There is also the publicity campaign of Hong Kong, your world-class campus. We will be promoting the study in Hong Kong brand. We want to recruit top-notch talents and students to come to Hong Kong for education and research and development. We will also be doing some study tour in Hong Kong activities, providing diversified experiences for different parts of the world. We will also have the UGC subsidizing the universities in publicity. We will also have the quota for non-local students being increased in the form of having over-enrollment. We will increase the cap from 40% to 50%. For postgraduate courses, it will be increased from 100% to 120%. In the long term, this should aid Hong Kong's development into an international hub for post-secondary education. Please note that the increase of the cap for non-local students will not affect the 15,000 places allocated to local students. Universities will take a pragmatic approach considering their facilities and to the need to maintain education quality in over-enrollment of non-local students, and they will make sure to charge fees on a cost recovery basis. We will have the Northern Metropolis University Town development providing additional space for the education sector. We will actively participate in the different committees of the government to expedite development of the university town. On hostels facilities, we have the Hostel Development Fund supporting universities in providing more hostel places. We will leverage also on market forces to expedite supply of hostels. That would include expanding the facilitation measures under the hostels in the city scheme to have other redeveloped commercial buildings become hostels. We will also earmark new commercial and other land for hostels. We will also be promoting FEPAD, vocational and professional education and training. We will encourage UAS's Universities of Applied Sciences to work with top-notch enterprises in aiding industry education collaboration. We will also work with the Greater Bay Area institutions to form an exchange platform. We will also actively explore with mainland authorities in recognition of sub-degree qualifications. We also support primary and secondary schools to take part in our development of an international education hub. We will allow on a pilot basis DSS schools to take on more classes and more students per class. We will also try to promote DSE further. We already have the DSE widely recognized by different schools, but we will try to do more to enhance its recognition. We will also combat abuse of the system by irregularly providing DSE courses and shell schools. We have formed a task force with mainland educational authorities. We have also set up a reporting mechanism. We have also made clear the arrangements for mature students in studying DSE curricula. We will also promulgate a code for private schools. We will also set up a register of private schools to make sure we have a list for reference for the public of compliant private schools. We also want to try to facilitate in the government's efforts in attracting and retaining non-local students. Through school allocation exercises, we have allocated 2 vacant school premises to increase 1,000 places for international schools. We have also earmarked land in the Northern Metropolis for the development of international schools. We encourage international schools to increase the number of students they admit. We will also remove restrictions to allow international schools to build hostels and upgrade their facilities on a self-financing basis. In order to tie in with the national strategy of promoting digital education, we have earmarked $2 billion under the Quality Education Fund to take forward support measures to promote digital education in primary and secondary schools. We will publish a blueprint for digital education in 2026 to include AI education in the core curricula of secondary and primary schools. We will also provide better training to teachers and review curricula of STEAM subjects in senior secondary schools on the senior secondary level to provide talent support for the development of INT. From 2025-26, we will regularize love our home, treasure our country activities so that we can instill in students a sense of patriotism. We will also enhance the senior secondary Chinese history and history curricula and provide different experiences in mainland exchange activities and enhance the values or publish the values education course framework in 2025-26. We attach great importance to the physical and mental well-being of students. We will regularize the 3-tier school emergency mechanism in secondary schools from 2025-2026, and it will be expanded to primary 4 to 6. We will also actively promote the 4 R's and mental health charter, encourage more school personnel to take on training in mental well-being first aid and promote parent education. Parents are the foundation of education. We will look into amending the education ordinance to introduce requirements in the form of practicing certificates and make adjustments to requirements if necessary to improve the teacher registration mechanism to ensure the teachers are qualified. Education is the foundation for building a strong country and invigorating the country. We will maintain liaison with different stakeholders to promote the higher quality development of education in Hong Kong and move towards the goal of building China into a leading country in education. Thank you. I would like to thank the Education Bureau for your support of the panel so far. Is there anyone who has not pressed the request to speak button? If not, I will draw the line here. We have already 17 members wanting to speak. I will assign a 4-minute time limit. Please leave enough time for the Education Bureau representatives to speak. If you go beyond what is reasonable, I will only let the Education Bureau representatives answer the first question. I'll read out the order in which members are going to speak. Mr. Li Kwok, Mr. Yu Potler, Mr. Benson Luke, Mr. Stanley, Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Dennis Lang, Dr. Tik Chi Yun, Reverend Peter Kun, Dr. Starry Lee, Mr. Lam Chen Sing, Mr. Rob Chen, Mrs. Regina Ip, Mr. Tang Fei, Mr. Chu Kwok Kung, Professor Priscilla Leung, and myself. Thank you, Ms. Lillian Kwok. Well, it's not often that I get to speak first. I would first like to express my appreciation for the Education Bureau's efforts. Education is not easy, and I do understand they have many directions, many things that they want to do. Of course, we want to have more details, so I would like to ask some questions. We'll follow up on those. For International Education Hub to internationalize CSE, I want to ask what the government's plans are specifically. I have some suggestions to make. It is important to promote Chinese, and we are well placed because we are connected to both the country and the world. We also have very high Chinese standards. Can we promote the education of Chinese in the Belt and Road countries as well as the ASEAN countries? So that would also help us recruit students to Hong Kong from those countries. On teacher profession, I understand that some requirements will be introduced, such as a practicing certificate, and there will be some updated performance indicators. But then we also have some teachers who are just supply teachers. If they is this requirement of 150-hour practicum requirement, they are unlikely to be able to meet it, and it would really affect their chances of working in the education system. So can you tell us what will happen in future to them? Thank you, Secretary.
Secretary, Thank you. On the internationalization of the Hong Kong DSE, in the policy address announced in September, we said that we want to further promote the Hong Kong DSE for wider recognition. All over the world, a total of 1,000 or so universities recognize the Hong Kong DSE, and this figure will continue to rise. This is very important because it helps local students to have more choices when they decide to pursue their study overseas. When students go to the mainland for further studies, they can enroll in international examinations and they can also take Hong Kong DSE. We will continue to work towards this direction. When it comes to supporting NCS, that is non-Chinese speaking students, we have introduced teaching materials for the Chinese language in order to help non-Chinese speaking students to better learn the Chinese language. We are studying this regarding the professional practicing certificates of teachers. We thank members for acknowledging the direction of further enhancing the professionalism of teachers. Regarding the details, we are seeking legal advice. In addition, in many professions, there is an existing mechanism of practicing certificates. That's why we will take into account the actual circumstances of schools while we flesh out the details. We will also take into account the situation of substitute teachers. Thank you. Mr. Perry. Thank you, Chairman. A task force on study in Hong Kong will be set up under the policy address. Study tours will be organized to promote more high-value study tours in Hong Kong. I also talked to the Secretary. When we develop a brand for studying in Hong Kong, we also need to develop a brand of study tour in Hong Kong. There is great potential in this regard. Many families bring together with their children to Hong Kong, to the campuses in Hong Kong to feel the education environment here. Hong Kongers also take their children to overseas countries to visit different schools. In order to develop our brand of study tour in Hong Kong, we do need to double down on our efforts in this regard. I'd like to know how the task force on study in Hong Kong can help in this regard. For us, the travel industry, we are willing to make contributions on attracting overseas teenagers to come to Hong Kong to feel the culture of Hong Kong. We are working very proactively in this regard. Will the task force have more dialogues with the travel industry? That is my question. Different post-secondary institutions have different policies when it comes to opening up the premises. That is down to different factors, say geographical environment and so on. Is there any mechanism to be put in place by the administration to encourage educational institutions to open up for study tours, say exchange tours from secondary schools? When teenagers come to Hong Kong, they want to take a tour in the city and they also want to join some exchange tours in Hong Kong. So I'd like to hear from the Secretary whether there is any room for development in this regard. Thank you. Chairman. Well, Secretary, Mr. Perry's proposal is indeed a good one. Even legislators cannot visit university school premises without any reservation, so how can we go around this problem? Thank you. Indeed, in the policy address, we have the task force on study in Hong Kong and the study tour in Hong Kong. As we are building Hong Kong into an international education hub, we need to consider how to attract more upper secondary or senior secondary school students. That is exactly why we propose to set up the task force on study in Hong Kong in order to achieve better results with half the efforts. When it comes to the task force on study Hong Kong, apart from the Education Bureau, ETO offices, ITIB, all these units come together. We will also dovetail with the tourism facilities in Hong Kong. It is important for young people to know more about Hong Kong, apart from study tours and exchange tours on campuses. That's why we look forward to a platform for the travel industry to enhance communication with the administration. We need to promote joint development. When it comes to opening up post-secondary educational institutions for the public, it is not quite suitable for them to open up their premises for sightseeing. They still accord priority to study tours and exchange tours. Mr. Benson Look, thank you. I can see that the administration has introduced a wide range of measures for strengthening the professionalism of teachers and promoting Hong Kong as an international education hub. In the policy address, I noticed there is the amendment to the Education Ordinance as well as the enhanced teacher registration mechanism, including practicing certificates and regular renewal. Professional teachers have a profound impact on society, not just students. That's why I attach a lot of importance to strengthening professionalism of teachers as well. I myself am a holder of language education bachelor degree. But I joined the commercial sector, the business sector, and it didn't get a registration. But we need to consider not exerting extra pressure on teachers while we are working to strengthen their professionalism. We need to enhance consultation and communication with frontline teachers. There is on-the-job training and CPD ladder for frontline teachers. There is a lifelong registration system, and in the policy address, it is proposed that a regular renewal mechanism should be put in place. Does it involve any additional professional education hours? Are there any new requirements? And when will the registration of teachers be removed when they have been away from the classroom for a certain period of time? Some teachers teach at private tuition centers. So what about these situations? For female teachers, in the course of pregnancy, they resign because they need to give birth to their babies and then they need to take care of their families. And it is only after a certain number of years that they go back to the classroom again. So what about these special situations? Secretary, thank you. Regarding the lifelong registration mechanism for teachers, there is no change. However, there is the requirement of practicing certificates. That's why, regarding the disqualification system, we do have a mechanism in place. For practicing certificates, we require teachers to fulfill certain requirements before they can renew the practicing certificates. That is different from the registration. Regarding CPD, 150 hours over a period of 3 years. We work with the Teacher Professional Development Committee and different school sponsoring bodies. We will conduct widespread consultation in order to better understand the existing situation. Regarding the regular updates, we are referring to the practicing certificates for different professionals. The period differs: 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. The requirements differs in relation to different professions. We will firm up on a reasonable period of time. Just now, Ms. Lilian Kwok talked about some actual circumstances as well. We'll consider all these situations in one go. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Stanley Ng. The policy address takes on board the proposals of the FTU. We welcome these measures. We support measures related to education in the policy address. I have questions on two fronts. One, on the post-secondary education quota. Now the percentage has gone up to 50%. Just now the Secretary talked about this increase in the quota for non-local students. This will not affect local students. However, in reality, how will the Education Bureau monitor the situation, or how will the UGC monitor the implementation of these measures in different institutions? How will you ensure the increase in the quota for non-local students will not affect local students, say in the use of public facilities in schools or teacher qualifications? How can you make sure this will not affect local students? Take Hong Kong as an example. Usually, in peak hours, students will have to line up all the way to the MTR stations. In September, even when they have already advanced the school hours, the same situation still persists. You cannot resolve the problem in this regard. What about teacher qualifications? This is close to the heart of a lot of parents, so I'd like to hear from the Education Bureau. What are you going to do in this regard? How are you going to provide sufficient teachers regarding the mutual recognition of sub-degree education qualifications? The administration undertook that you would discuss with the mainland counterparts, but there hasn't been any update so far. What is the progress? How is the administration going to handle this? That is, the mutual recognition of sub-degree education qualifications. Thank you. When it comes to increasing the quota for non-local students, that is the figure is set at 50% for over-enrollment. Educational institutions implement this measure in an orderly manner. Last year, the figure was raised to 40%. However, for non-local students, the percentage stood at 23.2%. These figures vary among different educational institutions. For the institution seeing the highest percentage, the figure stood at 30%. So when the cap is 40% and when the current usage is 20%, why do we still need to increase the figure to 50%? Well, actually, there are 4 years in a university program. The figure of 40% isn't spread evenly across all 4 years. That's why educational institutions have their own planning. They do so in a very pragmatic and cautious manner. At the same time, they need to take into account internationalization and diversification of education in Hong Kong. That's why we want educational institutions to have long-term planning. We tell them the cap in advance so that they can make better use of the resources. Next, on the mutual recognition of sub-degree education qualifications, we have been liaising with the relevant mainland counterparts. We have already reached a consensus with the Ministry of Education in the Guangdong province. We are following up on the mechanism. We take an incremental approach. When one measure is mature, we implement it. That's why we won't recognize all sub-degree holders across the board. We need to consider curriculum setting and so on. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you. Chair, I have a question on patriotic education. It is found in an early chapter of the policy address. I note in particular it said that patriotic education will be integrated into routine education. I want to ask what the Bureau has in mind to support schools, especially primary and secondary schools and teachers, to do that. I also note in paragraph 25, we will have some experiences for students on the founding history of the country and provide at least 40 routes with red resources through the mainland exchange programs and study tours. So I want to ask for at least the 40 routes. Have we had proper coordination with mainland authorities? Will we have some tailor-made itineraries for Hong Kong students? Another member asked about the cap for non-local students being raised, and we did see in the past few years we have a lot more non-local students. We have already relaxed some restrictions allowing them to take on part-time jobs. I want to ask if tertiary institutions have been given support to support life planning or career planning of non-local students, because in the end we want to retain them after they graduate. Next, on hostels. Indeed, we have a shortage of hostels, and I'm glad that we have the hostels in the city scheme. How many developers have expressed interest in converting converting their buildings into hostels? Thank you, Secretary. On support for teachers and schools in implementing patriotic education, we have provided training and teaching resources to teachers. We have also held diversified activities on history and culture for students. We also have additional funding for kindergartens on learning Chinese culture. We also have the Wide Learning Fund grant in secondary and primary schools. So teachers and schools have various support in doing that, in promoting patriotic education. As for what the member asked about the routes with red resources, we would like to thank the mainland authorities and organizations for providing relevant support to Hong Kong students on mainland study tours and exchange programs. We have concerted efforts to make these happen, and we are actively preparing for the itineraries with such concerted efforts. As for the cap on non-local students, how we can better retain them after they graduate, we have, as the member said, relaxed restrictions for them taking up part-time jobs so that they will have an experience of the workplace environment in Hong Kong. We also provide support in life and career planning. We have provided matching support. I understand that universities have career offices to match students to the different companies. As for hostels, we have received 150 odd inquiries. 9 of them have submitted applications, 5 of them were granted. So as at September this year, we have the 5 approved applications providing an additional 1,500 places. Mr. Dennis Leung, Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Chair. The policy address mentions the goal of developing Hong Kong into an international hub for post-secondary education, and that we will have study in Hong Kong brand. I note that $40 million will be given to universities for publicity, the UGC institutions in particular, but we have also other tertiary institutions that really need some help in publicity. And we also need to make sure there is no misleading information in publicity, so that when non-local students come to Hong Kong, they know they're coming for what they wanted. And it is also said that we will raise the cap to 50% for non-local students, and the number of non-local students will get to approximately 60,000. We really need to provide adequate hostel places for them. We will have 7 additional projects, 6,500 odd units. In total, we will have 15,000 units, but that is just 60% of the non-local students in 2025-2026, and that's just for undergraduates, not including postgraduates. How can we make sure we have adequate hostel places for not only non-local students but also local students? I also note that we will have a teaching package for secondary schools. In future, will we have that for primary schools and kindergartens, so that we can aid parents in their nurturing of their children? Indeed, the UGC will provide $40 million for the 8 UGC universities for publicity, and the HUCUM will make sure to steer that funding's use. As for other institutions, such as vocational institutions and self-financing universities, we need to make sure there is no misunderstanding. What we'll do is we will actively publicize such on social media. We have enhanced our recent efforts. We'll continue to move along this direction. As for hostels, we adopt a multi-pronged approach. We have dedicated funding from the Hospital Development Fund, then that has really expedited things. We have now 40,000 odd places provided by the universities. With the additional 15,000 odd places, we will have close to 60,000 hostel places. With hostel demand arising from the university town development, we expect a great demand for hostel places, which is why we have been actively leveraging on the hostels in the city scheme. We have received quite positive feedback. We expect supply to be increased significantly in the next few years. And we have clear allocation mechanisms for universities so they will consider different factors when allocating the places. Thank you. Dr. Tek Chi Yun, I have 3 questions. Excuse me. I want to speak on behalf of some grassroots parents. I really hope the government can reconsider the withdrawal of the 2,500 allowance. Maybe we can set some standards so that only households who are already obtaining the textbook allowance may be granted with that $2,500 allowance, the student grant. It is also said and emphasized time and again by the government that the race and non-local student cap will not affect the places provided to local students. But I am concerned that with the more students, it may affect the provision of facilities. So is it the case that with more students, they can really maintain a similar quality in education? And the secretary explained earlier, with a relatively low utilization rate, why the government has to raise the cap from 40% to 50%. But honestly, I think that logic is flawed. I also note that we are expanding the 3-tier emergency mechanism. I do appreciate that, but we really need to focus on early identification. From what I heard from schools, representatives, and social workers, they think that early identification is really important. Do we have more concrete support for them to aid them in early identification of students in need? Thank you, Secretary. For the $2,500 student grant, I said many times before, we want to allocate resources to projects and measures that need the funds most, because the other measures are more targeted. We think that non-discriminate disbursement of funds is not the best approach. As for parent education, we have another member talk about the resource package also, and we are trying to flesh out the framework, and we will try to provide more resources to parents in future. Dr. Tick also asked about the raising of the cap for non-local students, whether it may compromise the quality of education. We will pay close attention to the situation, but we already noted that the 8 UGC-funded universities have engaged a higher proportion of teaching and staff members, up to 15 to 60%. So that is like a few hundred people. I believe with more students, they can attract more top-notch academics to Hong Kong. So I think it's a win-win for all. I explained earlier why we need to raise the cap from 40% to 50%, even with incomplete usage. It is because we have 4 years in universities, and they want to engage students not in a single year but over different years. So we want to provide more wiggle room for universities. As for how we can identify early on students in need, especially with mental health needs, it is about providing professional training to teachers and educating parents on enhancing their awareness so that we can have students identify early on for any assessments if needed. Thank you. Reverend Peter Kun, I'm sure we all know patriotic education is very important, and the policy address covered the area. But before, when we talk about patriotic education, it's about telling students about the country's achievements and the good things about the country. Sometimes we have reservations about this approach because I've talked to some elite students. They seem to think that they don't know what difficulties the country faced. So they are nurtured in a relatively warm environment. I asked them how much food the country needs to consume in one day, and it's actually 2 million tons. It's funny that they don't really know about this, and I ask DeepSeek also how many eggs will be needed in the country in one day, and apparently it's 1.4 billion, and the students were again quite shocked. I think they need to understand how the country is also facing some difficulties, and we need to review the curriculum of the patriotic education in Hong Kong. They textbooks right now focus on the good things, which is good, but I think with us knowing more about the challenges of the country, it will also be good for the students of Hong Kong. So I want to ask if the Education Bureau will consider talking about this different side. Well, I think the referent is a good referent and also a good teacher, secretary.
Thank you. For patriotic education and national education, we don't just look at the positives and we don't just emphasize the achievements and the progress of our country. We want local students to visit the mainland. That is because we want them to have a good understanding of the challenges in the development of our country. What are the difficulties as our country is developing? This will help our students to enhance their sense of mission. They need to understand we need to work very hard for our happiness. All of us have a responsibility for the development of our city and our country. We encourage students to conduct soul searching and reflection after exchange tours. There are a total of 56 ethnic minorities living together. How can we foster racial harmony? How can we foster racial respect? China is a very large country. This is a rare opportunity for our local students to be exposed to a wide range of cultures, say for heritage conservation, archaeology. Different new technologies have emerged. We have seen different breakthroughs. We want students in Hong Kong to know more about the rural village development in China. All these are possible areas of exploration. Thank you. Next member, Dr. Starry Lee. Thank you. I acknowledge the administration's efforts when it comes to promoting education measures. I'd like to talk about certain areas. On patriotic education, I thank the Bureau for having done a lot of work. This year is the 80th anniversary of our War of Resistance. Many legislators and people in society see this as a good start. So how can we embed the history of the War of Resistance in our history curricula? The administration has incorporated a lot of relic sites of War of Resistance into our local curricula. So what measures or what plan does the Education Bureau have? This is indeed a very good opportunity for students to have an in-depth understanding of the relic sites as well as the heroic history of martyrs. Regarding developing Hong Kong as an international education hub and promoting study in Hong Kong, we need to leverage on the resources of the post-secondary institutions, education institutions in Hong Kong. We now have the condition to make contributions to our country by grooming more talents. There is an increase in the number of non-local students, including master's students. We need to consider the allocation of resources and the diversity of resources. For the 8 major universities in Hong Kong, they are quite good at fundraising capabilities. That's why we need to take a holistic approach when we consider stakeholders. in our development of Hong Kong into an international education hub. It is unavoidable that campuses and hostels need to be expanded. We need supporting measures and facilities to help schools to take in more students. But all universities in Hong Kong are facing the issue of a crammed campus. That's why we look forward to resources and supporting measures to help universities in Hong Kong in their development. On interfacing between education and employment, we want students to be able to find a good job upon graduation in the middle of economic transformation in Hong Kong. In the Northern Metropolis, a lot of schools want to take part in this project. But no matter how much you increase the area that is 5 hectares large, it will not be sufficient to satisfy all applicants. When schools make an application, I hope that the Education Bureau will render support. I hope the Education Bureau will take on board my proposals. Thank you. Secretary. On patriotic education, it's true, as Dr. Lee said, there are relic sites of the War of Resistance in Hong Kong. We need to link them to the everyday life of our students. This will enhance their sense of understanding, and this will also help them better understand the repercussions of war. Then they will cherish the hard-won days of happiness. They also need to better equip themselves so that they will make better contributions to the country. Otherwise, when our country isn't strong enough, we might be subject to bullying. Member also mentioned resource allocation. I go along with that. Just now, member also talked about expanding campuses in Hong Kong, including using existing space for teaching or increasing the plot ratio of their campuses so that they can make good use of the land in their campuses so that they can provide more teaching and learning facilities. On the interfacing between education and employment, we have set KPIs in the past few years. For STEAM-related subjects and aid center-related subjects, the figures need to be 35% and 60% respectively. We have the highest number of graduates who are science majors. These figures ranks first globally. We have already seen results. We'll continue to work towards this direction. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lam Chen Sing. Thank you. In the policy address, it mentions the cap of 50% for non-local students. Now there is an arrangement for non-local graduates to stay behind in Hong Kong to work. According to this scheme, every year the applicants total 8,000 to 10,000. Now every year the figure has risen to 26,000. In the future, when educational institutions can take as much as 50% of the total number of students as non-local students, then this figure may even rise to 30,000 to 40,000, and these figures may even surpass the figure for local graduates. Now, non-local students or graduates can look for a job freely. So I'd like to know how the Education Bureau and Labor and Welfare Bureau can help graduates to find a job based on their profession. We also need to make sure the manpower gap will be plugged according to the manpower projections. We don't want non-local graduates to find exactly the same type of job as local graduates. Now the jobless rate is on the high side. We don't want graduates to be jobless upon graduation. I look forward to better enhancement of employment resources or support. Next, turning to teaching registration mechanism. Some teachers may be away from classroom for, say, 1 decade or even 2 decades. They may have left Hong Kong, and when they come back to Hong Kong, they want to teach again. So for this new arrangement, it's not quite effective. By contrast, you need to let this type of registered teachers be able to return to schools to teach after they have taken certain continuing professional education courses. Thank you. Regarding non-local graduates staying in Hong Kong to look for a job upon graduation, true. After they graduate in Hong Kong, if they continue to stay in Hong Kong to work, this will be conducive to the development of the local economy as well as local manpower pool. How can we further enhance supporting measures so that these graduates will find a job according to their expertise, will continue to work closely with different educational institutions? Now we are doing quite well when it comes to collaboration between the business sector and schools. We have career planning for different students. As I understand, different universities provide services in their respective career offices. Support services are provided. Next, turning to the practicing certificates for teachers, we want teachers to move with the times. We don't want teachers to obtain a qualification but then stay away from the classroom for a long period of time and then someday later they come back to the classroom. That is quite irresponsible. We want these teachers to stay current. They need to keep pace with change when it comes to legislation covering the well-being of children. Otherwise, if they lose touch with the legislation or teaching practices in Hong Kong, that is quite irresponsible. After we have the mechanism for practicing certificates, then this is a gatekeeping mechanism. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Rock Chan. I thank the Chief Executive for adopting a lot of our proposals, and we see a lot of high-quality education policies. I'd like to ask about UAS, University of Applied Sciences. The government supports collaboration among leading enterprises overseas and local students or local UAS. Are there any supporting measures to help UAS to work or to collaborate with leading enterprises? We need to foster industry and academia integration and collaboration. Are there any measures to help UAS to make better use of the loop area? We need to leverage on the loop area to work with mainland enterprises. Is there any supporting measure in this regard? When it comes to AI, it is said that AI framework will be launched. This is very important. But do we have sufficient teachers who are well up in AI? For the Education University and Hong Kong U programs, are there sufficient AI programs to equip teachers with the relevant qualifications so that they can teach students? Thank you.
Secretary, thank you, member, for your question. We have all along been trying to enhance coordination between UASs and top-notch enterprises in matching the supply and demand of talents. And we have, since last year, been taking forward the development of UASs. We have promulgated the relevant standards. We have been seeing 2 UASs established last year. We have also seen the Alliance for UASs established. We have earmarked $100 million for the development of UASs. I believe with the UAS Alliance, we will see in future the expedite of development of UASs. On the loops development, we have all along been, as with the development of UASs, we need to have regard to the different sectors, the government's foci of development in future. We provide early on relevant information to institutions. So in planning or finances, institutions will be prepared. As for AI literacy, whether teachers are equipped to teach AI. As you may know, the development of AI is very rapid, so we try to provide updated information to teachers as much as possible. We also provide support to teachers on how they can make use of AI for teaching. The steering committee for the digital education development will promulgate the relevant standards, including professional development for teachers. Thank you. Mrs. Regina Ip. I want to ask about paragraphs 143 to 146 of the policy address on providing recognition for DSE. We know that the DSE is very much recognized in the mainland. In fact, we have seen some problems arise from that. We have seen some unfairness with locals. You talked about how there are over 1,000 institutions recognizing DSE. When we have 1,000 odd institutions recognizing DSE, why do we need to promote this further? We know that in the US, they recognize SAT results. We have in the UK, they would recognize their own qualifications. When we have some elite countries in education, they do not really recognize other qualification exams. They would just have students take their exams. So do we really want to spend resources on this? Why not allocate resources to something that we need more? Next, we have a lot of people asking about international schools. In fact, most of the inquiries I receive in relation to education is about international schools. Will you have more international schools in the Northern Metropolis? I also support the increase in the number of students for international schools. I went to a boarding school when I was younger, and I actually maintained liaison with some of the Southeast Asian students that boarded with me at the school. So I want to ask if you can allow boarding schools to, in particular, admit more IB students. Thank you. Secretary, when I talk about recognition for DSE, we have 1,000 odd institutions covering many institutions in Europe, the US, and Australia. We have, of course, many universities in the mainland recognizing DSE qualifications. We have a list on the HKEA website on this. That would also include elite universities. We have many of them being elite universities because we have, in particular, an academic excellence or excellence scholarship scheme, and those who have achieved great results in DSE would be awarded with the scholarship. And we are talking about promoting recognition of DSE because when the HKEAA officers liaise with counterparts in education in Europe, they don't really know about DSE, so they did not include DSE as one of the recognized qualifications, which really affects the prospects of local students. So while we do know that DSE is widely recognized, we do want to further promote international recognition of DSE. We have a lot of institutions in the mainland recognizing DSE, but the problem is some mainland students only see DSE as one of the options for international examinations. They would rather take GCEs to get admitted to other universities, say UK universities. So we want to tell them DSE is also a viable option. We have already earmarked land in the Northern Metropolis. The preliminary idea is to have the international school or schools in our town made, but that would depend on the actual circumstances in the end. As for boarding schools, we do want to have them increase the number of students they admit if they have the relevant capabilities. Thank you, Mr. Tang Fei. I have some very simple questions. One is on practicing certificate and license. It seems that there's some confusion. People are mixing up the two. So can you, the Secretary, clarify that the two are different and the process of application would be different? There may be some overlap, but they should be distinct, right? Otherwise, there are problems, I would say. And we have seen some recent media reports. We have some classes on the mainland that are, some institutions from the mainland providing education in Hong Kong, and they are not licensed. In the mainland, they have different licenses for schools and training institutions. There's no such distinction in Hong Kong, I believe. So I want to ask, in Hong Kong, do we need to distinguish between schools and tutorial schools? For unlicensed tutorial schools, if they are operating in Hong Kong and if they're recruiting students, what are we going to do about them? And I welcome what is said in paragraph 142 of the policy address, allowing DSS schools to admit more non-local students. But there is a condition, it seems. It is about non-local students who have student visas. So I want to ask if that include MMT students. We do have non-local students getting student visas to study in secondary and primary schools in Hong Kong, but MMT students are not included. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Tang, for your question. On your last question, it does not include MMT students because for those who are under 18, we do not have student visas for those from Macau, mainland, and Taiwan. As for tutorial schools registration, we would have some tutorial schools providing non-official courses. They probably only provide classes on some of the disciplines, so they wouldn't be seen as official schools. They would be seen as tutorial schools providing tutorial classes, which is kind of like what we have locally, some tutorial institutions. the activities of these tutorial schools will have to comply with the requirements for tutorial schools. And we have seen indeed some recent media reports on whether there are some tutorial schools that do not comply with the relevant requirements. We adopt a risk-based approach in regulation. When we have received complaints, we will immediately deal with such complaints. We also have a random inspection team to inspect premises that are suspected of having irregularities. If it is found that someone has breached the relevant laws, for example, there are more than 8 people in a tutorial school learning, and there are more than 20 people in one day, there is no registration of the school, it will be seen as having contravened the relevant rules. As for practicing certificate for teachers, when one has PGDE or relevant qualifications, they can register as a teacher. But if they have to obtain a practicing certificate after they have obtained a teacher registration, they must be hired by a school before they can obtain a practicing certificate. For new or recent graduates, one can only obtain a practicing certificate after they have been hired by a school. For in-service teachers, they have to fulfill CPD requirements and maybe some new performance indicators that will be updated from time to time. We will see what the interval of adjustments should be. For those who have not practiced for long, they would be registered, but then they have to meet certain requirements before they can obtain a practicing certificate. Some think that one is disqualified without the practicing certificate, but that is not the case, because it would only be that when we revoke the registration of a teacher that one is seen as being having to be disciplined. So these two are very much different. I hope the Education Bureau can provide some consultation paper to the sector and society in general, because I think society's concerns are very much justified. Thank you, Mr. Chu Kwok-kang. I have some comments to make in relation to practicing certificate requirements for teachers. I would first like to declare an interest. I am a chairman for a relevant education union, the Education Workers Union, and there are different CPD requirements. We already have teachers undertaking continuous training, and they have been trying to keep up despite the heavy workload. They are very much exhausted. With you introducing practicing certificate and CPD requirements, it really raised concern among teachers. I hope that there can be a full consultation of the sector, including teacher unions. The Education Bureau should also have regard to local circumstances and the feasibility. You should not only do something for the sake of doing it. We do not want to hurt the morale of teachers. On DSS schools admitting non-local students, it is said in the paper that the SS secondary and primary schools are allowed to increase the number of classes and increase the number of students per class to attract more non-local students that have student visas. So I want to ask, will there be any restrictions on the courses to be taken? Whether the courses have to be local or can they be overseas? I think that the government has not given a proper explanation on this. If non-local students can undertake local curriculum, will they be able to go to subsidized schools? If not, why are we excluding subsidized schools from our development of the Study in Hong Kong branch? Thank you.
Secretary, thank you. On the practicing certificates for teachers, CPD is one factor. We also check whether the teacher has any criminal conviction record. This is very important for safeguarding the interests of students. We conduct a check every 3 years. To some professionals in other professions, they consider this requirement very lax. We need to strengthen the professionalism of teachers, so this is a step that we must take. We have been liaising with different stakeholders, and they have a very positive feeling about this. They think this will better reflect the professionalism of teachers when it comes to DSS schools and meeting non-local students. They have better conditions than subsidized schools. Apart from the language of instruction, they provide non-local curricula as well. Regarding the subsidies provided by the administration, there are very clear criteria, and there is a school fee mechanism for DSS schools. Well, can subsidized schools take part in it as well? We need to provide conditions for students aged below 18 from mainland Macau and Taiwan. We need to see the demand. We need to gauge how great the demand is. Otherwise, if there is not enough demand, our efforts will go down the drain. That's why we need to take a pragmatic and cautious approach. This is exactly why, when it comes to DSS schools, a pilot scheme will be put in place to take this forward. When it comes to MMT students aged below 18 regarding the visas, well, I think this is not just under the purview of the Education Bureau. The government departments and the bureaus in 2 places will have to enhance communication. Thank you. Mr. Ambrose Lam, Hong Kong DSE is recognized by over 1,000 universities. Do you have any plan to internationalize the Hong Kong DSE that is similar to SAT in the US, TOEFL in Canada, and GCSE in the UK? As the Secretary said, we are the only city in the world that has 5 top 100 universities. We're going to have the Northern Metropolis University town soon. It doesn't just attract local students, local schools. It also attracts many mainland universities. They cannot wait to come to the NM University town. We need to provide better interfacing in this regard. This will attract global students to come to Hong Kong to apply for admission to local universities. I'd like to hear from the Secretary. What is your take on it? Thank you. Secretary, thank you for your questions. We need to consider a host of measures for establishing Hong Kong as an international education hub. The internationalization of the Hong Kong DSE is one part of it. Many students from outside Hong Kong can consider the Hong Kong DSE. When it comes to the export of local education services or the influence of our curricula, the Hong Kong DSE can indeed go global. We need to make a breakthrough. To do this, we need to try different methods in order to promote our high-quality education system, including the high-quality education and assessment system of Hong Kong. Thank you. Myself, I thank the Bureau for adopting a lot of measures that we have been advocating. Say, International Education Hub, we have seen many measures. Now we also have an increased quota for non-local students and the task force on study in Hong Kong. I'd like to follow up on the practicing certificates for teachers that is close to the heart of many members. There are a total of 160,000 teachers who have a registration certificates, but there are only 40,000 secondary and primary school teachers in Hong Kong, meaning a quarter of a total of 160,000. So how can we better plan the manpower projections for teachers? We need to implement the registration mechanism and practicing certificate mechanism well. For those who have already obtained PGDE, can they teach at schools? Well, in this conference room, a total of 6 members have obtained PGDE, including myself. If I want to teach, and if I have to take 150 hours of courses first, that'd be quite difficult. I think we need to conduct consultation to gauge the operability of this measure. We need a dedicated organization to promote Hong Kong as an international education hub. That is an organization similar to the British Council. Now, in the policy address, it is mentioned that a task force on study in Hong Kong will be set up. What is the positioning of this task group? Would it be a temporary setup? Will it be like the Invest Hong Kong, for instance? As members said just now, for MMT, they cannot study in subsidized schools at present, but they can be admitted to international schools and DSS schools. Will the task force on study in Hong Kong promote international schools and DSS schools? Many members are concerned about the development of the NM University town. I thank the Chief Executive for adopting the suggestion proposed by Ms. Doreen Kong, Ms. Chan Yut-ming, and myself. We talk about accelerating the development of the NM University town. Can you brief us on the latest progress? Will the area be expanded as society has been calling for? The Secretary just now talked about the mutual recognition of sub-degree holders. CAP 320 has been passed. That is the post-secondary education ordinance. How can we align the mutual recognition in 2004 with that in 2019? Well, I think our education quality won't pale by comparison when it comes pale by comparison with Macau. I see no end to the review. How can we better implement it? Thank you. On the practicing certificates for teachers, we have already heard members' and views. We'll definitely consider different possibilities and situations in the actual implementation of the mechanism. For those holding a registration certificate without any CPD requirement fulfilled, this is an example of implementation, so the task force will consider this situation. We won't mandate the completion of a total of 150 hours of CPD before a teacher will be allowed to teach at a school as a substitute teacher. Regarding the task force on study in Hong Kong, will it be a regular task force? Now we have a committee that is led by the Chief Executive on the development of the Northern Metropolis. We will adapt to the times and implement or publish the framework within next year. We are taking forward this project full steam ahead. Regarding the task force on study in Hong Kong, we are taking forward the relevant measures across different bureaus. We will step up publicity about this task force. If need be, in the future, we will have regard to the needs in the future, say enhancing our collaboration with different mainland offices and ETO offices. How can we better work with the talent engaged to form a communication platform? Next, turning to the mutual recognition of sub-degree holders, of course, the first step is always difficult. We will take forward this measure in a pragmatic manner. Our ultimate goal is to expand the project to the whole country. Thank you, Secretary. We work hard together. First round, Professor Priscilla Leung hasn't come back. Second round, well, we have already drawn a line. But 3 members, including Dr. Wendy Hong, Professor Lau Chi-Pang, and Mr. Tong Li-Che, they want to speak in the second round, so probably 2 minutes for each, questions and answers included. Thank you. Dr. Wendy Hong, thank you. The ratio of non-local students is increased to 50%. Just now you told us that they are self-financing. They are studying on a self-financing basis. So what does it mean? What areas does it cover? Next, on hostels, in the past 10 years, the success rate for non-local students is higher than that for local students. The living conditions in Hong Kong are actually not as good. University students live in quite cramped conditions. But owing to a lack of means, they want to stay in hostels. Regarding the Hostel Development Fund, 75% of the funds come from public money. In the future, do you have any distribution guideline? Will a certain quota be earmarked for local students so the local students will also be able to stay in a hostel? Thank you. Regarding the self-financing basis or self-funded basis, we mean the recovery of the cost of teaching. University costs cover hardware, R&D expenditure, and so on. So when universities calculate school fees to be collected, they need to recover the direct costs of teaching. For non-local students, it is not fair to ask them to share the R&D expenditure of universities. That's why we proposed a self-funded basis. Regarding the allocation of hostels, actually hostels are an important element of university education. Each university has very clear mechanism for hostel allocation. We want to enable students to feel the internationalization and diversification of living in a hostel. There are different geographical locations for different hostels. Universities submit to us the living rate, application rate, and success rate. It is not the case that non-local students have the edge, as Dr. Wendy Hong said. With new hostel measures being implemented, I believe the competition will be eased. Let me add something. As far as I know, for funding for UGC-funded universities and self-financing universities, they are different. Say for Professor Lau, he is a high-ranking staff member at university. If I help him organize an event, I'm charged on the air conditioner fees as well. Well, Professor Lau holds a very high-ranking position at universities, and these have to be handled differently or separately. There are very strict requirements. Regarding hostels, the Secretary is correct. Most hostels are given to local students. There's a hard and fast requirement by the UGC, and I have to clarify this. Thank you.
Professor Lau Chi-Pang. Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you, Chair, for your reminder. About paragraph 25, the experiences in relation to the founding history of the country. I think the arrangements are very good, but can we have the roots start in Hong Kong? Because Hong Kong is also an important part of the founding history of the country. That would include the establishment of the Political Consultative Conference. That would also cover a group of patriots in Hong Kong asking the country to convene as soon as possible a meeting of the Political Consultative Conference. Since 1946, we have many activities in Hong Kong relating to the founding history of the country. So if we can have the roots start in Hong Kong and then they will have the students go to the mainland, it will show there will be some synergy. Thank you. Secretary, it is as Professor Lau said, before the students leave for the trips, they cover relevant content in their civic education courses, and they will have some visits beforehand before they participate in the study tours. And I note recently some content on Lin Zexu, and we have quite a number of incidents that took place here in Hong Kong. We want to enrich the content of the visits with regard to such content. We will make sure to have these working together to create some sort of synergy. Mr. Tony Tse. Thank you. Chair, I would first like to express my appreciation for the Education Bureau for actively responding to inquiries from members. I would also like to talk about the issue of hostels, as did other members. I do appreciate the hostels in the city scheme, but the supply and demand gap is huge. How can we do more? Can we expand the scheme? We have recently seen some enhancements to the scheme, having included some commercial buildings and hotels that are being redeveloped. Can we cover maybe industrial land also, because we do not have as much demand for industrial land now? Perhaps we can go along this direction. I also support the Education Bureau on a pilot basis, increasing the number of classes and the number of students per class for DSS schools. For the education industry, what is in demand is not just tertiary education, but also secondary education. So I think this approach of the government is good. If you have good outcomes after the pilot, perhaps you can expand on that. Thank you. Secretary, the government is working hard to relax restrictions, provide facilitation measures to encourage private sector participation in providing hostel places. While we're trying to expedite supply, we are also trying to explore different options for students. So in future, whether we should include industrial land, we need to consider whether the environment and facilities are suitable for students. Thank you. I would like to say, Mr. Tongitze, what he said is quite valid. We suggested the arrangements for the hostels in the city scheme, and afterwards it has been launched. And we actually talked to some development bureau representatives that some of the buildings would be new industrial buildings that are redeveloped, that are in the commercial zone, but industrial buildings cannot be covered at the moment. So perhaps we can consider expanding this. Professor Priscilla Lang. Sorry, I was at another meeting. Please excuse me if some of my questions are already asked. I very much support what is said in paragraph 16 about developing international schools. I support the government's measures because we need the international schools. With school allocation exercise and earmarking land in the northern metropolis for development of international schools, I really appreciate that because it addresses market demand. It is said that restrictions will be relaxed and there will be facilitation measures for international schools to increase the number of students they admit. And you may also provide some support in hostel supply. Can you talk about what specific measures you have in mind in removing the particular restrictions? We have 3 members asked about this, so perhaps you can just give a brief response, Secretary. We want to make sure the development of hostels within the international schools comply with the planning standards. The hostels would have to be in existing land of the schools. We will provide some support and facilitation measures in expediting the development. Perhaps in the approval process, we will try to expedite the speed of fetching applications. We pay close attention to the situation because as we develop Hong Kong into an international education hub, we have observed some demand from non-local families for such, and we do see that they have a demand for international schools. We have observed how children of non-local families want to have their children take international courses. Thank you, Chair. Have you done any analyses related to this? Because Northern Metropolis is a new development project after all. We have regularly assessed the demand for international school places. We have 50-odd international schools in Hong Kong at the moment. We have approximately 90% of the places utilized. We do need to keep in view of the talents coming to Hong Kong under talent admission schemes. We will make adjustments if necessary. At the moment, we think the supply for international school places is adequate. As for whether we will have more international schools, whether we'll grant land for that, we will need to really gauge the demand and supply in future. We have already allocated 2 vacant school premises for international schools, and that has already brought about an additional 1,000 places. All right, we have our time constraints. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Planning in light of changes in school-age population. LC paper number CB brackets 31369/2025 brackets 02. This issue is of concern to many members. If members wish to speak, please press the request to speak button. We have today in attendance Dr. Jeff C. We have also in attendance Ms. Magnolia Long, Principal Assistant Secretary, Mr. Cliff Ho, Principal Assistant Secretary. Dr. Jeff C., when you're ready. Thank you, Chair. Education is the key to nurturing talents. We have all along tried to consolidate investment in education to enhance teaching and learning quality. We do know there is a structural decline in school-age population. We have in our plans in an orderly manner lower the supply of school places so as to achieve the target of soft landing. We want to have various measures to support schools, and in turn will move towards high quality development of schools. We need to make sure we have a diversified learning environment for students, which is why we have changed the arrangements from 2025-2026 to 2026-27, increasing the number of places per class. We have also been trying to accommodate the different talents and their families, and we ask schools to provide diversified facilities to support newly arrived students to help them adjust to the local learning environment, including some initiation and induction programs. We also have the various extracurricular classes available in order to meet demand for senior secondary education. We will expand the relevant planning arrangement to Form 4 to Form 6. We need to have regard to the long-term supply and demand for school places in Hong Kong with our various measures to enhance the relevant arrangements and support schools. We believe we will be responding to the demand and needs of parents. We have also an enhanced school development arrangements for the application of subsidized schools and school sponsoring bodies to provide diversified courses in vocational education for students. We will leverage on this opportunity to rationalize existing resources to enhance quality of education and learning and teaching resources to expedite the pace of implementing small class teaching so that more will benefit. We will also continue to enhance school premises and teaching environment. With regard to the decline in school-age population, we will focus on reprovisioning and expanding school premises. We will also encourage school sponsoring bodies to relocate public sector schools from districts with surplus of school places to new development areas. This will not only meet the demand for school places in new development areas, but also balance the supply of school places among districts. We all along try to maintain a high-quality teaching force. We have comprehensive plans having regard to various factors to set the training for teachers and hold activities to maintain professionalism of teachers. We are also making good use of educational resources to promote the high-quality development of the city. We ask school sponsoring bodies to be pragmatic and gauge the demand of the parents of students within their districts and make plans in advance. The Education Bureau will continue to pay close attention to the situation and maintain close liaison with stakeholders. We will make sure to plan in advance to respond to the changes in circumstances. We will also tie in with the national strategy of invigorating the country through science and education and leverage on our own advantages to nurture talents for the country. That's it for my report. My team and I are more than willing to take questions from members.
Thank you, Undersecretary. Our meeting will run until 1 o'clock. 4 minutes each. Questions and answers included. If members' questions are too long, I will ask the Undersecretary to answer in brief. The lineup is Mr. Dennis Leung, Deputy Chair, Ms. Lillian Kwok, Mr. Lam Chun Sing, Mr. Ju Kwok Kang, Professor Priscilla Leung, and myself. Any member would like to speak but hasn't yet pressed the button? If no, I'll draw a line here. First member, Mr. Dennis Leung, Deputy Chair. Thank you. From 2025, Primary 1 school-age population will drop from 48,600 in 2025 to 37,500 in 2031. That is a decrease of 11,100. 600 to 700 pupils each school, that will lead to a reduction of 15 to 16 primary schools. As for secondary 1 school-age population age 12, the figure will drop from 58,800 in 2025 to 49,800 in 2031. That is a decrease of 9,000. This will lead to a reduction of 11 secondary schools, which is quite a large figure. In the past few months, different measures have been implemented to address changes and decrease in the school-age population, including the amalgamation of schools and the transformation of teachers in order to reduce the impact of the teaching profession or teachers in general. But not all schools will act on the measures of the administration. That is because some of them find it difficult to amalgamate different schools. I'd like to ask about the positioning of public primary schools and public secondary schools. Will the administration close down public primary and secondary schools? Will it help the government to address the decline in the school-age population? Will it foster the development in this regard? Undersecretary. Thank you. Just now, Mr. Dennis Leung told us about the figures. That is how many schools will be closed down in the future in light of the changes in school-age population. Indeed, there are changes in school-age population, and this will affect schools as well. That is because some schools will be closed down owing to a lack of admission figures. Some schools will be amalgamated according to the preference of school sponsoring bodies, SSBs. We will have to gauge the pace of this according to the development. The situation of different districts varies. As I walked members through the document, I mentioned there were provision schools in new development areas in order to cater for the demand for school places in new development areas, NDAs. This will help ease the pressure on student admission in particular districts, and this will help us address the changes in school-age population in a multi-pronged approach. Just now, members referred to public schools. There are challenges brought about by the decline in school-age population. We have actually done some work in this regard. Say for Longcheng Government School and Kowloon Industrial Schools, we have amalgamated these two schools. We have also combined another two primary schools, that is the North Point Government School and the other school in North Point. For the other public or government school in Canton Road, it has been moved to Sai Kung, and it has been renamed as well. There is a reason and value for government schools to exist. The Education Bureau is the school sponsoring body of government schools. So we will implement some pilot arrangements. The government is the SSB of government schools. We have already tested some new measures. We hope other SSBs will follow suit. We won't just close down all government schools in order to address the declining school-age population. Thank you. Next member, Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you. I believe the decline in the school-age population is close to our hearts. The education ecosystem is undergoing changes. The Education Bureau has been implementing measures across the board when it comes to changes in the school-age population, say for the teacher-student ratio. Well, I think this is a good opportunity for the government to think about the education ecosystem on general education. Is it possible for us to look into the teacher-student ratio? In a document, there is the mention of characteristic programs and characteristic schools. We need to attach importance to the grooming of VPET talent when secondary schools are turned into characteristic schools and characteristic program providers. Is it possible for us to change or adjust the teacher-student ratio? This will better cater for the demand of different schools. In relation to resource allocation, measures are implemented across the board. This will enable the administration to provide characteristic programs. When it comes to new arrivals, I understand the administration has actually done a lot. These students have helped us plug the manpower gap. Well, for new arrivals, why do they need to go to international schools and DSS schools? The reason is that the medium of instruction is Putonghua or English. English is allowed to be the medium of instruction in some schools in order to take care of NCS students. However, local students flock to these EMIs to get admitted. That actually encourages competition. But what we want to do, or what we wanted to do, is to provide support for NCS students. Some secondary schools want to teach in Putonghua in S5 and S6 Is it possible to relax restrictions if schools find it mature to teach in English and Putonghua? Is it possible to use these two languages as the media of instruction? Thank you. Undersecretary, thank you. Schools in Hong Kong face the challenges of student admission. Their positioning is different. The goal of development of these schools needs to be in line with parents and students' needs. They need to address the challenges and opportunities in the future. Member just now talked about the ratio between teachers and students. Of course, this is a fixed ratio, but the number of students in each class in different schools varies, some with more students, some with fewer. That's why the teacher-student ratio in different schools will not be the same. There is flexibility in this regard. Just now, member talked about across the board. Indeed, when there is flexibility and when a school has fewer students, the teacher-student ratio will be on the low side. When it comes to taking care of new arrivals, as we mentioned, we have different measures. Say we have the initiation program and the induction program, allowing schools to flexibly harness different resources to organize after-school interest classes and activities to enable students to settle into the new learning environment at school. Regarding the medium of instruction at school, there is flexibility as well. Say for junior secondary school, there is a policy allowing schools to adopt flexible arrangements to teach in different languages. Regarding NCS students, we want to encourage them to learn the Chinese language. That's why in the curricula in Hong Kong, we don't make it mandatory for schools to teach in English. We want students to be bilingual, to be good at both languages. That is our goal of biliteracy and trilingualism. Where I have follow-up, I want Putonghua to be permitted to be used as a medium of instruction across different subjects. I also want characteristic programs to be more flexible. Thank you, Mr. Lam Chen Sing. Thank you. In the paper, talent admission schemes are covered. The figures are provided. But we need to keep a dynamic watch on the situation. There may be changes in policies, and probably a couple of months later, we need to gauge the updated figures of the top talent pass scheme. If more dependents can stay in Hong Kong, then the situation will be different. Or when there is a new policy, say when dependents need to come to Hong Kong for 2 years before they can be considered local students, will some dependents choose to come to Hong Kong earlier, say in secondary 3 or 4, so that they will become eligible for taking the DSE? Then this will lead to an increase in the number of senior secondary school students. But when it comes to primary school students and kindergarten students, the numbers will continue to be low. We need to have an accurate assessment regarding the allocation of school places of UGC. Each cycle is 3 years. We need to keep a close eye on the situation, especially for the teacher-student ratio in secondary and primary schools. Just now, the Undersecretary talked about a lot of measures having been implemented, including the amalgamation of schools. But the progress doesn't look good. Is it possible to stay ahead of the curve? Some older districts, the admission figures may be the same. You should talk to them earlier to see what their preferences are, if they are willing to be amalgamated, and if they're willing to move to new areas in Northern Metropolis, then you may provide incentives, say subsidies. My next question is in relation to the reduction of door knocking places. To some parents, it means fewer chances to study in schools that they like. Is the impact that great? Thank you. Regarding keeping a dynamic watch on the situation of the school-age population, we will continue to monitor the situation closely. As we mentioned just now, we have increased the quota for non-local students. We will keep a close eye on the situation, say how many non-local students will stay in Hong Kong upon graduation. When they choose to stay in Hong Kong to have their own families and to give birth to their children, then this will lead to potential source of students. We'll continue to monitor the situation. Regarding providing more incentives for amalgamation, members correct. In our work on school premises allocation, when 2 or 3 schools are amalgamated and moved to new areas, will there be priority arrangements? Will we enhance incentives to encourage amalgamated schools to apply for subsidies? Well, this is our direction. We'll continue to liaise with different SSBs. Some SSBs may consider amalgamating different schools under their purview. There are different factors at play. We'll try as far as possible to help SSBs to solve the problems they face. We will also be expediting the amalgamation of schools. Regarding the door knocking places, this is a pilot arrangement. For S1 and P1, we're implementing some pilot arrangements. We'll continue to review the situation. We will also be liaising with the relevant academia. We have already heard views from parents. Thank you.
Mr. Chu Kwok-keung. Thank you, Chair. It is a fact that we have a declining school-age population. Some would describe the current situation as like Squid Game. It is hard for schools to survive. The Bureau is making it even harder for schools. So even though the schools may have survived a particular year, if they do not have enough students for the next 6 years, they will still have to close down. So I'm asking if the Bureau is still adopting a soft landing strategy, because what you're doing now is conflicting with that intention. If you are no longer adopting a soft landing strategy, why not set KPIs on how many schools are to close and how many schools are to be amalgamated? Next, I want to talk about the issue of dependence of top talents. We have the Education Bureau providing support services for mainland students who are dependents of talents, but I have heard some schools say what the Bureau is doing is a little troublesome, because you would not have regard to the school circumstances when allocating students. For example, the subjects elected may not even be the subjects that the student wants to study. So essentially, the Bureau is just allocating students to fill places rather than having full regard to the circumstances or allowing schools to take their own students. Thank you. Undersecretary, I want to give a consultation response to Mr. Chu's comments. Mr. Chu talked about how we have many schools that do not admit an adequate number of students, but then there is another issue where schools don't want to take students allocated by the Bureau. It seems that there is a conflict there too. School sponsoring bodies have to prioritize the welfare of students. Schools are not just there for the sake of it. When students have the demand for school places and they seek the support of the Bureau, especially for public sector schools, as the places are subsidized by the government. After conducting our own assessments, professional assessments, and we consider it suitable for a school to take a particular student who is a new arrival, the school would have the responsibility to take the student. As for whether there will be a mismatch in the subjects to be studied by the student and what the school has available, we can communicate with parents to see if there are any alternative arrangements that can be implemented and make adjustments if necessary. I would urge the member to not frame this as something that is forced. I believe there's always a way to resolve disputes. What is important is we have regard to the students' needs. We don't want to have schools having received the government support in resources but decide not to take certain students. The member also mentioned some schools face difficulties in admitting students. It is a fact because we have a declining school age population. For the benefit of students, we should not allow schools that have only a small number of students to exist, because they wouldn't even be able to hold sports days or choir practices. So we ask schools to plan in advance whether they should amalgamate with other schools to maintain an ideal number of students. In the end, we want to maintain or even enhance the quality of education provided. Thank you, Professor Priscilla Leung. The decline in school-age population is a challenge faced by different parts of the world. I note the Bureau and stakeholders have made different suggestions to tackle this issue. One of them is characteristic education, but I think it is difficult to practice. So say if we have certain schools focus on sports, I actually talked about before how there is a school that focuses on astronomy. But in the end, the secondary school closed down. The New Territories Hung-Yi Cook Southern District Secondary School. It's just hard, and we really need to think about how to transition schools if we have to develop that, and it is very difficult. I know that there is no specific resource on this at the moment for schools that are about to close down. We note that you are telling them to plan in advance to amalgamate with other schools or become characteristic schools. But I don't think the Education Bureau has personnel to provide professional advice on this. You may not even have the manpower for this, even if you do have professionals in this regard. So I think you really have to tread prudently with this approach. Second, we have many talented children wanting to go to international schools. The talents want their children to go to international schools because they have the stereotype that the schools may not be what they want. But we do have some schools that are known to be very friendly to the country that they would want their children to go to these schools. And we have seen such schools being quite popular among talents. The other thing that is a problem is that talents children may not be able to speak Cantonese, and we really need to do more to support education in this regard. We have now enhanced patriotic education, national education, that is actually already making more schools more friendly to talents, but parents from the mainland and overseas may not be aware of this. And also, if we can provide different streams in schools, that would be great. We can perhaps have a stream that has subjects taught in Chinese, the other stream taught in English, and I think it can really be beneficial for schools. Our Undersecretary, I will first extend the meeting by 15 minutes regarding Professor Leung's comments. What do you have to say? I would like to say that we have done various things, as the member said, on national education and national security education. The teaching environment, we believe, would not have students taught the wrong things. If there's anything that we need to follow up on, we have various evaluations to do that, for us to base our follow-up action on. And we would also like to tell new arrivals that there are many options available to them. It's not just a few schools that would be suitable for their children. We have also been promoting Mandarin and English education in schools. It is about providing an immersive learning environment. It's not just about having the medium of instruction being a certain language, but creating an atmosphere for learning different languages. For example, have someone sing Cantonese opera in English, or we have in some theater done in Mandarin or English rather than just in Cantonese before. We can also have some sports competitions that require students to speak in English only. I believe with the different scenarios, it will provide more diversified learning experiences for students. I would also like to address another comment made by the member regarding some recently enhanced arrangements. We have been encouraging schools to work with some fee-paid organizations or other organizations to have courses to provide more diverse pathways, study pathways for students. We believe this is one way of encouraging schools to develop characteristic education. Chair, I would like to say something. I'm talking about providing additional resources to schools that are about to close down, and you should provide them with support not just in admitting more students, but professional advice on how they can transition. All right, last to speak, that would be me. I have recently saw a search engine that produced a fake report saying that with the new teacher registration system and schools closing, we will see teachers losing their jobs and property prices decline. But there is some fact in it because we do see a decline in school-age population. A member talked about how we will see a reduction in 1/4 of the school-age population, and in some schools in secondary schools it would be 1/5. That has raised tremendous concern. We should not only close schools, we need to have comprehensive demographic policies to make sure future needs of society are met. So when we make projections on school-age population, we need to take into account the effects of talent admission policies. If you do not take into account these factors, we will have a serious misunderstanding. And we have seen with the chief executive's talent admission measures, we have seen quite good results. And if we have closed down schools, we can't really open them back up right away. We should account for a potential rebound in the school-age population. I also understand that some DSS schools are allowed to increase the number of students and the per class and the number of classes they have. This is not something new with over-enrollment of students. I think in future we should consider not just over-enrolling students, but actually allowing them to take more classes. In future, we should communicate with the Ministry of Education and the Immigration Department to relax the student visa restrictions. We should also allow public sector primary and secondary schools close to boundary control points to take MMT students on a pilot basis. The Secretary said earlier we are going to develop international schools, but then I think for public sector schools, they also want to benefit, and we need to heed their calls. We need to make adjustments in response to the demographics. The Education Bureau needs to have regard to the future needs of education in Hong Kong.
Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman. I fully agree that we need to expand capacity when it comes to education. On higher education and post-secondary education, we have achieved significant results. In DSS schools, we adopt a pilot approach to allow over-enrollment or increase the number of classes. So when there are vacant classrooms, we allow expansion of classes. For DSS schools, we allow the admission of non-local students. When they can admit more non-local students, it is actually a way to expand capacity and enhance quality. Just now, Mr. Chu Kok-kwang asked a question, which is in relation to subsidized schools allowing 4 classes to be increased to a total of 5 classes. That is a way to expand capacity and enhance quality as well. For schools that have been closed down, the campuses aren't given to the relevant department immediately. We actually carry out reviews. We do so from the perspective of education. If these school premises can be redeveloped as a smaller school premises, then we may keep these premises. Some schools could be redeveloped, or when some schools need to be redeveloped, they may need a temporary school premises. Regarding whether we will introduce a pilot approach to allow non-local students from mainland Macau and Taiwan to come to Hong Kong to study in secondary and primary school with a student visa, we'll continue to explore with the Ministry of Education. We'll have to take a holistic approach and consider different factors. Thank you. Thank you, Undersecretary. Next agenda item number 4. Any other business? Any from members? If no, once again, I thank all members of the current term of the Legislative Council. I also thank Deputy Chair and the Secretariat as well as the administration. Thank you very much for coming to the meetings. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.